Hello, everybody. I am broadcasting webcamless at the moment because I'm using the teacher computer in the lab, which does not have a webcam. So you're just going to have to picture my lovely, beautiful, handsome face as I'm narrating this video. What I have in front of me is Visual Studio 2019. Hopefully, at this point, all of you should have that as well. What I'm going to be showing you today is content from the first part of Chapter 2. It is how to do output in C++, how to print things. The first live lesson of the week, if you're in class either Monday or Tuesday, whether you're in person or live, I'll be going through this first part with you, but this is a little redundancy. Doesn't hurt to practice. So when you're at the opening screen in Visual Studio, what you're going to do is create a new project. And as I said to those of you who are present in the classroom, once you've done this step, then right here, you shouldn't have to do it again. It is an empty project in C++. If you scroll down past all these different options, it's a little bit down there. You go to empty project. It says start from scratch with C++ for Windows, provides no starting files. That's what we want. Hit next. And you want to, as I said before, in my opinion, it is easiest to find these folders on your desktop. So I hit the ellipsis button, the three dots. I go to desktop, select folder. It should be the default once you do it once. I just did it again just for redundancy's sake. And then up top, the project name, as with Visual Basic back in the springtime. Whatever name you pick here, this is the name it's going to be permanently. You should never change this once it's created. I'm just going to call this Chapter 2 Output Notes. Down at the bottom, I do have this checked to place the solution and the project in the same directory. I then hit Create. And poof, there we are, Visual Studio. So let me just walk you through a few things, what you should, what you don't need open. In Visual Basic, we had the toolbox. We do not need that for Visual C++. The output window down here is helpful. We'll keep that open. That's where it's going to tell us if we have any errors. The Solution Explorer will be important. That's where we're going to actually add our file here in a moment. The Properties window, honestly, you can close that as well. It doesn't really make any change because now the Solution Explorer is just really big. So don't close it. It's really no skin off my back. From here then, I'm going to go to the Solution Explorer. You see how there's just no window there. There's nowhere to type. So a source file is a file in your project, it's where your program code is. So I'm going to go up here, right-click, add a new item. Very simple. Right here, we're in C++. I know it says Visual C++, but it's the same idea. And the very first file here is called a C++ file. The extension is CPP. That PP, of course, is for ++. Don't change the location. It should be desktop and then whatever you called it. The name, it ends in .cpp. Honestly, I typically keep this as source.cpp. If you want to change that to a different name, you're welcome to. It honestly doesn't really matter because it's inside a folder anyway. Hit add, and now we have our window. Blinking cursor waiting for us to go. From here, again, I'm going to walk you through some simple outputs. The first thing is how to make a comment, how to make a header at the top of your screen. So there's two ways to do that in C++. If I do a /, the key that's by the question mark key, it is the question mark key, it's just the bottom of it, and then an asterisk, you'll notice that it turns green and it also puts on like a mirror image of what you just made. This is what's called a block comment. Anything you put now between those two, almost like they're parentheses, will be ignored by the computer. It is a comment. So what I'm going to do is what you typically should do. You're going to put your name. Today's date when I do this, it is September 2nd. When you make yours, you can do whatever day you'd like. Period 238, let's just say period 2. And as I said, chapter 2 output notes. So this green text, it is ignored by the computer. It's a comment. Nothing you put there will matter to the computer. What some programmers like to do to make this kind of fancier is you can continue the asterisks like this, because really all that matters is you have the slash star and the star slash at the beginning and the end. So if I put any of this right here, ta-da, that's called a block comment. Now, when you first make a C++ program, it's going to seem pretty complicated. And I assure you that this will become second nature soon enough. Just like in Python, if you remember, we did some import turtle type stuff. In Python, there's a command called import. It brings in external libraries to your program code. C++ does the exact same thing, except we call it an include statement. So I use the pound sign, the number sign above the 3. I say include, and then I do a less than sign. And just like when we did the slash star up top, when you do a less than, it actually creates a greater than to match up with it. What we put in here are different files, like there's a file for math, there'd be for Windows, for graphics, for dozens and actually hundreds of different include files that do different things. You only use these when you need them for your program. So if you're doing a program that it doesn't use 3D graphics, like you don't include that part of the language then. It keeps your file small because you're only using what you need to use. I/O stream, I/O input, output, and then the stream is the flow of information back and forth from your computer to you and vice versa. We also then are going to put a command right underneath that called using namespace std semicolon. That command will make things briefer, more brief, whichever, for our coding. If you look at the textbook on page, I guess, 38 in the textbook, you'll see the first program here, like a Welcome to C++ program. And you'll see that it has like std : in front of the cout command. Well, having this line of code stops us from having to do std : before every single cout and every single cin. It just provides a shortcut, essentially. It provides that in front of our commands. So, as I said a second ago, just get used to typing that at the beginning of all of your programs. From here, we have what's called the main function. And I'm not going to dig too deep into this at the moment. You might remember doing functions back in Python. You might remember doing subroutines back in Visual Basic. We'll get much more in depth with this, but again, just let me give you the shortcut version of this. Every C++ program that's runnable has a main function. When you hit run, it tells the computer, hey, go here first. It's basically the starting line of your program. It has parentheses after, so you know that it is a function, just like f of x, f parenthesis x. It tells you that's a function versus just the variable f. The int, you can surmise, is integer. And then there's this line of code down here, return 0. Again, I'm not going to get too into this right now, but when we do functions, you'll learn that functions have types just like variables have types. Int, double, character, string, you name it. The main function happens to be an integer. When we put return 0, what we're doing is we're telling the computer, hey, this is the stopping point. We've gotten to the bottom of our program with no errors. Return 0. You'll also notice that I put in these curly braces, little squiggly braces, that the shift square brace. And by putting that there, you're beginning a block and ending a block. Notice my code is tabbed in to tell me this line is within this block. Python was very strict about tabbing. C++ is not strict about tabbing, but it still does it because it looks good. So every C++ program you do early on is going to look like this at the start. Include IOStream, using namespace, main function, opening, closing of the block, and then the ending, the return of the function. All right, let's move on then. So we talked about this is a video on output. The basic output command in the C++ language is cout. In other words, like C output. Don't call it cout. It is cout. What follows the cout is a symbol less than, less than. That symbol, believe it or not, is going to become a little bit confusing for you because when we do input, the arrow is going to go in the other directions. There's going to be greater than instead of less than. You are inserting or extracting information from the input-output stream. When you're saying cout, what you're saying is whatever follows this symbol, the less than, is going to flow into the output. So if I type a quotation mark, hello there, this string, remember strings are just text enclosed in quotes, this is going to flow out to the output command, showing it on my screen. I'm going to end the line with a semicolon. The semicolon denotes the end of the statement. It's the statement terminator, which is a really cool name for such a simple thing. You notice that some lines do have semicolons, some do not. The main function does not, the IOStream does not. The semicolon is going to be one of those points of frustration with you early on. It's going to be something that you forget or you mess up where it goes. Follow the templates. I mean, that's why I'm making these videos, and you'll get used to the idea of the semicolons in general. And this is not a hard, fast rule, but in general, the lines of code that are inside the blocks are going to have the semicolons. The ones that aren't are going to be without the semicolon. Now, of course, you have this exception here. Whatever. Again, it's the first 20 minutes of the video. I'm not going to get too deep into it. So now we have a program. If I go up top here and I hit the run button, the local Windows debugger, click on that. Down here in the bottom, it's going to compile. And if you did everything correctly, there shouldn't be any errors. And let me drag this onto my screen. Right here, hello there, there's the text I outputted. This other stuff, like this first part, that's just the file that you just created. It's the folder that you made on the desktop. Don't worry about that. Exited with code 0. It reached the bottom of your program and got a return 0. And then this message to automatically close the console when debugging stops. So I can run the program and have this black screen close automatically. I've chosen not to, but it's telling me that that's how I do it. So just basically ignore everything on here except for this. Notice it says press A key to close this window. Let me close it, and I'm back to my program code. Easy enough. Okay. What happens when inevitably things go wrong? Let's say I forgot a semicolon at the end of my return statements. You'll notice that right here, there's a little red X. One error. Click to navigate to the error list. So I can just do it on the fly, and it'll tell me, expect a semicolon. I can double click, and it's going to take me to there, not to here. Well, just like your previous languages, the computer's not foolproof. It's not perfect, especially in finding errors. If you have an error seemingly on this line, check that line, but if you can't find anything wrong with it, which, I mean, what's wrong with a curly brace? Nothing. Check the line right before it, because what it's saying is that you should have something here. Expect a semicolon. Not that it should be here, but it should be right before it. Okay? You're going to have errors. Just like last year in the first year class, you're going to have errors all the time. And without us face to face, it's going to be difficult to discern what the problem is. That's why we want to make sure you guys can take screenshots and things like that, so I can look at your code in case you have a mistake. Again, what happens if I do a typo? C++ is case sensitive, so if I capitalize cout, it'll tell me cout's unidentified. I don't know what that is. Well, that's because you have it spelled incorrectly because it's not a capital C. It's little things like that that are going to come up that it's hard to plan for. So do your best to figure out your own errors, but if worse comes to worse, take a screenshot and show me, and maybe I can fix it for you. Okay. One more time, if I run this, there's the words hello there. Let me do another statement below that. Cout, how are you? And you have a semicolon at the end of that one too. If I run this, something a little bit unexpected probably happens. You have the text side by side. Hello there, how are you? Well, that's because you never told it to end the line. Before you do the semicolon, you add an end L, end line. That tells the computer, go to the next line. Now, hello there, how are you? Should I have one at the end of how are you? Yeah, I mean, that's the end of the program, so you can't really tell what's going on there. But yes, you should have an end L at the end of your text in case something else is yet to come. Notice that it changes the colors of these certain things. Symbols are this like greenish blue. The end L is like a brownish color. Your strings are red. Your comments are green. So it just is a way to highlight things. Before we go on, up top here I showed you about making block comments. You can also make what are called inline comments. At the end of this, let's say for some reason I want to make a comment, I can use 2 forward slashes. This is an inline comment. So it's just an easy, quick way to comment something about that particular line of code if you have to. Notice that, just like I said, C++ does not worry about your horizontal tabbing. Your vertical tabbing is really not an issue either. Your white space, I have multiple lines here. It doesn't look good, but it's okay. I mean, you should really never have more than one line of code between 2 lines like that. So this is what a fully featured output program will look like. Okay. Let me show you a few other things. There are special characters called escape characters. How do you print a tab? How do you print a quotation mark? Those are just little things that come up every now and then that if I try to do something, if I try and say cout, I said to him, look out. Well, I mean, you can tell right away what's wrong. You have a quotation mark here, but the problem is the computer thinks that's the end of your string. So the escape character, you're actually going to use a special character before another character. That probably sounded strange, but you're going to use a backslash. The backslash T is for a tab. The backslash quote makes a quote. The backslash makes a backslash. Backslash, easy for me to say. Because if you're wondering, like, well, if the backslash starts what's called an escape character, then how do you make one? Well, you just do 2 of them back to back. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. So to fix this line right here, I'll do a backslash quote and a backslash quote. And check out what happens. it makes this pink to tell me that that's a special 2-symbol character that just makes a quote. So this quote is the end of my entire string, whereas this is simply going to make a quote. To prove to you that that's the case, let me just run this real fast. And there you go. I said to him, look out. Is that going to come up very often? No, but you never know. A tab is good for when you have something like this. If you have cout, let's say something like miles and then tab and feet. Let's say you're making some kind of chart or graph. By doing this, you don't have to hit space, 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 space. You can simply tab it apart. And can you use multiple /t's in a row? Absolutely. So that's going to make a nice set of columns for you. There is one more, and that would be \n, which is new line. It's just like endl. The new line is just like endl. Let me show you what I mean. If I do cout, well, let's do a/n b/n c, and then endl. It's not going to print A, B, C left to right. It's going to print A, B, C vertically because the N, the /n, is going to print down the screen. The A does not have a space before it because there's no space right here. But because I did a /n followed by a space, it's going to be space B, space C. But that will be another way of doing endl to end a line of code. Okay. So that's the end of this video. I'm going to wrap up continuing into our next video, which will discuss some more things with output as well as talking about input and then getting into variables. See you then.